So a pleasant morning, Professor Ellen Cortesa. First and foremost, I am Aljayavil Mungdang, and again, welcome to my video presentation. Week 3, Module 3. We're given a task to define what is linguistic universal, what is universal grammar, what is the standard of English, explaining the concentric circle, explaining its inner, outer, and expanding circle, and defining accent and received pronunciation, and describing or defining the four major varieties of English, which is the American English, the British English, the Australian English, and lastly, the African American English. The number 7 is describe the Philippine English or Filipino English. So first is the linguistic universal. It is a pattern that consistently appears in different natural languages and may be true for all of them is known as a linguistic universal. For instance, if a language is spoken, it has a consonants and vowels. All languages also have nouns and verbs, and the goal of this area of linguistic research is to identify generalizations across languages that are probably related to cognition, perception, or other mental faculties. It is closely related to the study of linguistics typology. The field was largely developed by a linguist, Joseph Greenberg, who derived a set of 45 basic universals from a study of about 30 languages, most of which is dealt with syntax. Chomsky's proposal for a universal grammar served as a major influence in this discussion in this area. Next is universal grammar. A survey in linguistics usually credited to Noam Chomsky that suggests that the ability to learn grammar is built into the human brain from birth regardless of a language. According to this universal grammar theory, some rules apply to all languages. Every language, for instance, has a means to make something undesirable or pose a questions. Every language also has a way to indicate gender or whatever an event occurred in the past or the present. If all languages share the same fundamental grammatical principle, a child just needs to adhere to the specific norms that his peers do in order to comprehend and speak their native tongue. In other words, he is born with the ability to learn any language efficiently, but his environmental dictates which language he will use. The third is the standard English. It's a controversial term for a form of the English language that is written and spoken by educated users. The term standard English refers to the both an actual variety of language and an idealized norm of English acceptable in many social situations. As a language variety, standard English is the language used in most public discourse and in the regular operation of American social institutions. The news of media, the government and legal professions, and the teachers in our schools and universities are all view standard English as their proper mode of communication. Primarily is expository and argumentative writing, but also in public speaking. The next is Kachru concentric circle. Braj Kachru was a professor of linguistics who coined the term World English. World English refers to the fact that English language has been used as a global means of communication in numerous dialects worldwide. It is also refers to the movement towards an international standard of the English language. Kachru constructed a model of different uses of English around the world. This model is comprised of three concentric circles, which he labeled the inner circle, the outer circle, and lastly is the expanding circle. Let me start on the inner circle. The inner circle is comprised of those countries who are considered the traditional basis of English, such as the UK, the USA, Australia, and Anglophone Canada. English in these countries are classed as first language. Kachru labels the inner circle countries as the norm providing. The norms of the English language are produced there. The second is the outer circle. The outer circle is comprised of countries where English is not spoken natively, but it's still maintained as an important language for communication, as an official second language, or as the nation's official language for business and commerce. Largely due to historical reasons, these countries include India, Nigeria, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Malaysia, Tanzania, Kenya, and non-Anglophone as South Africa and Canada. Kachru labeled this country as a norm developing. The norm developing and norms produced by the inner circle as further developed and reproduced in the outer circle. The last is the expanding circle. The expanding circle includes much of the rest of the world's population. Countries that do not hold historical government importance towards English but class it as a foreign language or a lingua franca. Main example of such countries include most of Europe, China, Russia, Japan, Korea, Egypt, and Indonesia. These countries are norm-dependent. They fully depend on the norms originally produced by the native speakers of the inner circle. They generally do not develop or reproduce Englishes. So the next is the accent and received pronunciation. Received pronunciation, or RP, is the accent traditionally regarded as the standard and most prestigious form of spoken British English for over a century. There has been an argument over such question as the definition of RP, whether it is geographically neutral of how many speakers there are, whether a sub-variety exists of how appropriate a choice it is the standard, and how the accent has changed over time. The name itself is controversial. RP is the accent, so the study of RP is the concerned only with the matters of pronunciation. Other areas relevant to the study of language standards as vocabulary, grammar, and style are not considered. While accent an effort in speech to stress one syllable over adjacent syllables, such as a way of speaking typical a particular group of people, and especially of the natives or residents of a region. It is the American English, the British English, the Australian English, and the African American English. Let me start on the American English. American English, sometimes called as United States English or US English, is the set of varieties of English were language native to the United States and widely adopted in Canada. English is the most widely spoken language in the United States, and it's the common language used by the federal government, considered the de facto language of the country because of its widespread use. The second is the British English. British English is the English language that has spoken and written in the United Kingdom, or more broadly throughout the British Isles. Slight regional variation exists in formal written English in the United Kingdom. English is a West Germanic language that originated from the Anglo-Prussian dialect brought to Britain by Germanic settlers from various parts of what is now northwest Germany and the northern Netherlands. The resident population at this time was generally speaking Common Brittonic. The insular variety of continental Celtic is just influenced by the Roman occupation. This group of languages are called Welsh, Cornish, Cornbread, cohabited alongside English into the modern period, but due to their remoteness from Germanic languages, influence on the English was notably limited. The next is the Australian English. Australian English is a major variety of the language used throughout Australia. Although English has no official status in the Constitution, Australia English is the country's national and de facto official language, as it is the first language of the majority of the population. Australian English began to diverge from British English after the founding of colony of New South Wales in 1988, and was recognized as being different from British English by 1820. It arose from the intermingling of early settlers from a great variety of mutually intelligible dialectal regions of British Isles, and quickly developed into distinct variety of English. The last is the African American English. It's a vernacular English, or AVV, is the variety formerly known as the Black English Vernacular, or Vernacular Black English among social linguists, and commonly called Ebonics. Out of the academic community, while some features of AAVE are apparently unique to this variety, and its structure is also shows many commonalities with other varieties, including a number of standard and non-standard English. Varieties spoken in the US and Caribbean, AAVE, has been a heart of several public debates and analysis of variety, has also sparked and sustained debates among social linguists. The last is describing the Philippine English, or Filipino English. The Philippine English is recognized globally as one of the largest English-speaking nations, with majority of its population having at least some degrees of fluency in the language. English has always been one of the official languages of the Philippines and is spoken by more than 14 million Filipinos. It is language of commerce and law, as well as the primary medium of instruction and education.